If it's not in the source material originally, you cannot manufacture that, okay? The source is the most important part. This is a video about source material to use for evaluation of audio equipment. And like I said, I've been looking forward to doing this one, and I think I'm about ready. Well, hopefully we're ready anyway. So we're gonna begin, and I want to talk first of all about what we mean when we're saying source material for evaluation of equipment. So for example, when you're going out looking for speakers or any other piece of equipment, usually what you'll do in the past is what we did is we took our CDs and said, I could play cut 3 from this, or whatever. Nowadays what you do is you have a streamer and a tablet, and the kind salespeople will, set up the stuff for you and, move things around and all of that. And then sometimes they'll select them for you on the pad, on the iPad, or whatever tablet they're using. Sometimes they just hand you the tablet, leave you alone in the room, and let you evaluate to your heart's content. But the thing is that you need that source material. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with sources, well, first of all, what is it that you're evaluating in the first place? What are you looking for in this? And there's 4 or 5 things generally. The first that I want to talk about is soundstage, all right? And soundstage is simply the width and the depth of where the music is coming from. Usually it's somewhere between your speakers, or a little to the right and to the left of your speakers, and also maybe somewhat in front of your speakers or slightly behind your speakers, and into the wall, and in very rare, wonderful circumstances, it even extends into the wall, okay? So the crokinole board becomes part of the sound itself. Not exactly, but that's it. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the sound stage. Now, related to that, but is the position within the sound stage. I was going to say separation, but there's an actual technical thing for left and right separation as to how much bleed there is between that. I'm not necessarily talking about that, although that, of course, that's a stat that can be useful in just the dry evaluation of the specifications of a system. But what I'm talking about is the position of the instruments within that stereo spectrum. Okay, so you have the sound stage, the drums are back here, the hi-hats are over here, the guitar is over here, the horn is over there, the vocals nice and coming right out of the center. But not only just the position of them, but the focus of them as well, okay? And this is all part of that second item there. The vocal, is it kind of nebulous coming from there, or is it coming right from the center, right from where the voice is? And in the best of systems, you have it very localized to where the voice is coming from a very tight space, but also you can almost envision sort of a 3D embodiment of the person. I'm going to talk about some of that a little bit later as we go into that. So that's another thing to look at. The other thing, the third thing, is dynamics, okay? The ability for the difference between loud and soft and how that plays out. Is it more of a staccato type of thing when it's supposed to be? Or is it supposed to be staccato and it kind of has that legato thing where it kind of melds into that? When you know your source material, you know whether the system is doing it accurately. That's a point I'm going to make in a moment here, okay? But first I want to go through some of these elements here. So we've got the sound stage, the location of the instruments, the dynamics, the ability for it to play and for you to hear that change in a timely manner, in the manner in which it was recorded. A fourth element of this is also frequency response. But again, that's something that really needs to be measured. That's something that you can't precisely measure with your ear. But what you can tell, are the highs too high? Are the lows not low enough? Because that's usually what the problem is. The highs are high and really harsh and shrill. Or the lows are not low enough, or when they are, they're very muddy. When in a source that they shouldn't be muddy. So that's some of the things in that. The vocals, Are the vocals overly pronounced? Well, if in the original source they are kind of overly pronounced, and that does happen in certain sources. There's a few Joni Mitchell albums where I find that to be the case, but that's a process of the recording. It's not a fault of the equipment. But generally, you want a nice balance there. There usually is a little mid bump in a number of speakers, particularly, but in other equipment, which lends actually a kind of nice quality to a vocal. But you don't want too much of that, and you want more of a balanced look at that. So that's what we're looking at. Now, I think the most important thing, the fifth thing, and I don't know if I'm going to do these in this order, because aside from soundstage and placement, these really aren't as significant in terms of order of how you're looking at them. But that is the clarity of something, the way that something is reproduced in an accurate manner. How do you hear it, and does it sound like the hit of a drum? Does it the hit of a brush? Let's say, do you actually hear the head, or the an upright bass? Are you almost being able to hear the wood? We'll talk about what that means a little bit later. But all of these things are the five things that I think are important. How clear. The technical term for it is resolution, and you'll see that a lot in the reviews. What is the resolution of this equipment? Now, one thing I want to say before we go any further is you'll read a review and it will say, the soundstage of this power amp was incredible. Then you'll read a review of a preamp and you'll see it say, the soundstage of this preamp is incredible. And then you'll see a review of a DAC or a streamer. The soundstage of this was incredible. And then, of course, when you hear about the speakers, right? The soundstage of these speakers, of this pair of speakers, was incredible. Now, the thing is that if you're new to this, especially, it's like confusing. It's like, well, where does the soundstage, where is it made? Is it made in the power amp, in the preamp? Does it lie in the source? Does it, the source reproducer? I gave my thing away. It's in first the source, and that's why picking sources that you know well, picking source materials that you know well, is vital to evaluating the equipment with your own ears. How does this sound to you? Now, one of the things that you need to know about source material is that if it's not in the source, as we talked about, it's not just in the items. If it is not in the source, it is not going to be in the other elements. You can't manufacture it. These things, what they do is they embellish it. They make things that are clear in the initial recording appear clear. So what can happen is the electronics can muddy it. It can, over embellish it, under embellish it, be subtle, be really. But the thing is that it is the source material where the soundstage comes from, where the clarity comes from. It has to do with the way that the thing was mic'd. So that's why with sources, it's not just enough to just pick what your favorite song is, although that does have its merits. But also you want to look for something that has, the basic qualities that you're looking for. And so oftentimes we'll turn to audiophile grade recordings or recordings that will help embellish that. So, but the source is where all of this stuff originates. And then it is, how do the speakers reproduce that? How does the power amps? They all have a role in it, but it has to be in the source material. If you don't have a lot of experience with this, either you're retired and you're finally just going into this to get a good system, or you're a younger person and you don't know, what's the way to approach this. All reasonable things. That's where you might want to look and see sources, and that's where a video like this I hope is helpful. I'm going to give you some sources and tell you some things to listen for in those. But the ultimate way to use your sources is to use material that you know really well. I mean really well. You don't have to write down, at 1:05, this is when this happens. Although there are people who do that, and that's fine. And if that helps you, that's great. I just kind of have a more overall look at what I want to see, and I know my sources really well. Some of them because I've been listening to them for like 40 years. So So I know this, stuff. But I wonder, is it 30 years or 40 years? Maybe 40 years. Yeah, definitely. Maybe even 50. But anyway, so that's why I kind of wanted to, what I kind of wanted to do today is to kind of go through looking at these sources. And again, if you have your own, that's best to do. But I'm going to show you some of these. And even if you don't use these sources, and by the way, that's another thing on sources. Even, if someone tells you, oh, you must listen to this because this is the absolute best or whatever, if it's something that you don't like, you really shouldn't be listening to it, okay? It's got to be, first and foremost, some music that you like. If you like some of this stuff, that's great. If not, find some other stuff. But anyway, this is kind of just how I go through the sources and what I listen to. The first thing I'm going to talk about, the first source, is actually one of the first sources that I ever used when I was 17 years old. This came out in 1976. It is the John Clemmer Barefoot Ballet album, and it is incredible. And one of the songs that I've used in evaluation here is well, back in the day, on albums you have sides, but it was side 2, cut 3, Talking Hands. And again, this is all a jazz, softer jazz type stuff. I love John Clemmer. Talking Hands, for actually the guitar solo that comes after the theme. It's the first solo on the 7 or so minute cut. And it's actually Larry Carlton. And I had always thought in my mind, for some reason, I was thinking it was Daryl Sturmer. But it isn't. It is Larry Carlton, and you usually think of, for those of you who know Larry Carlton, you usually think of electric guitar, particularly the Gibson ES335. Mr. 335 is what his name was, but he's on acoustic guitar here, and it is absolutely amazing. And that solo, what I find in that is the dynamics, because of the picking and how things just come out. But what I was listening to when I was 16, I wasn't that sophisticated in how I was listening to this or how I was thinking about it. And basically what I was listening to, is it clear or is it not clear? Is it, and how are the highs? Are the highs good, or do they get shrill? Do they get brittle? So that's something that I've used, and I still use this. Of course I stream it now. I'm not bringing in an album, although certainly I could, because everybody's got analog now. But this is the thing that I use. I use that cut, and I play it usually until the just to listen to how that guitar solo is coming out, what the dynamics are there, what the clarity of it is. There's a lot of string noise. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on in there. So that's the first one, and I still use that to this day. My other one has a little bit of a story. You have to understand that I am by trade a historian. I'm a trained historian. I actually have a PhD in history, concentrating mainly in United States history. But this, there's a little history then that I want to tell with this. Sheffield Labs, and I also think a company called Mobile Labs as well, were doing back in the 70s. I think this is actually from the one from 76. This might be earlier. I'll put these up in editing. But this was from 76, and this was a trend that was happening when originally records were being produced. They were all direct to the disc, whether it was a cylinder, then when it was a disc, and you spoke into the, whatever rudimentary mics or sound capturing systems they had, and it was recorded all in one take, okay? Then when things got to tape and got more sophisticated, you would do it all on tape, and you could edit it, you could bounce tracks, you could do all these things, and then you put it on to the master lacquer disc for the vinyl LPs. Well, what they decided to do is, let's eliminate the tape. Let's go direct from mic to lacquer master. So what Sheffield Labs and the others were doing with this direct-to-disc technology was they were using all of the modern capturing equipment of, the mixing board and the really good microphones and all that stuff and placement and all that theory, but they were going, and again, remember these are LPs, so it's sides. So they were going side 1, record, you drop the needle at track 1, and the band, very well rehearsed, plays all the way through to the end of what side 1 would be. It's an amazing thing. And I remember when we heard this at first, and remember, this is before the digital revolutions, before really CDs were, popular in the 80s, right? So we're going back to 76. This was unbelievable. It was like rivaling open reel tape as the amazing source, and it's a heavy disc. Anyway, incredible. And so why was this important? Because you got incredible dynamic range. That there are a lot of limits on analog. No matter how much people want to say the LP was the best, the LP is the best because it presents itself in a certain way to that person who thinks it's the best. But it's not necessarily as revealing, and it doesn't necessarily have as much dynamic range. But once you took the tape out of the equation and did this directly, by the way, the musicians had to, I said this already, but the musicians had to play this from beginning to end. And if there was a mistake, you either lived with it or you redid it. So that's an incredible thing just in of itself, and why you want to listen to stuff like this. There were lots of people who did this, but my favorite one is the one that I've been holding up for 35 minutes, and that is the Dave Grusin Discovered Again. It's an incredible album. You can easily stream it on any service. It's available. You just, for artist, search on Dave Grusin. You'll find Discovered Again as one of the mid albums in his discography, and then you just put that in there. The song that I want to talk about is originally was on side 2, but you're going to find it's going to say three cowboy songs. The first one, Get Along Little Doggies, which is a really cool, snappy song. The Colorado Trail. The Colorado Trail is not the song I want to talk about, but it is amazing for maybe a sixth thing that you might want to look at, and that is the noise floor. Because when something is silent or has a lot of silent passages, is there a lot of hiss or is it nice and quiet? On this album, it's a silence that is almost deafening in its silence, and you kind of want to experience it. But the real one is three cowboy songs, and on the streaming services that I've seen it on, 3 is misspelled as THRE or THE or something like that. It's misspelled, but so don't look it up. Look it up by artist. Don't look it up by the song. Cripple Creek Breakdown. And if only because there's a lot of other reasons to do it, but again, talk about dynamics. The drums, the drummer on this is Harvey Mason. This also features greats like Ron Carter on bass, Lee Ritenour on guitar, Larry Bunker on percussion, and Harvey Mason on drums. And that song kicks off with this Harvey Mason drum solo, boom, ba-doom, 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 psh. Like, you have to listen to it. You have to listen to it. For copyright reasons, I can't play it. But the dynamic range of those drums, of the kick, and what you want to listen for is something that is really punchy. You can really hear it. It's nice and it's quick. It's it's precise. It's crisp. And on the current system that I have right now, not because of the speakers, but because of I think a limitation of the amp, it's a little not as just really staccato, just really crisp as I'd like to have it. So it's revealing to me that in the system that I'm using now, which I already knew this, of course, but I'm going to need some tweaks, and so that's what I'm going to do. If I'm holding this over here, the lighting is like a little too close on me right now, so that's why I'm not purposely hiding my face. I'm trying to save my eyesight. So anyway, but that is a great song to listen to for dynamics. Not only that, the soundstage in it is kind of generally between the speakers. One thing I do want to caution: if you listen to the song, there's two moments. Not moments, but two sections where there's a big walking bass, that's going on while the soloing is going on in two different sections. If that bass sounds a little more legato to you, a little more joined together as opposed to crisp, don't worry about that, because that's part of the source material. And that's what I was going to say. If it's not in the source material originally, you cannot manufacture that, okay? The source is the most important part. But anyway, I wanted to say that if the bass sounds a little more legato, more, put together as opposed to more tight, don't worry about that, because that's kind of the way that it is on the source. The one thing I will say though is when you listen to this one in an incredible system, I'm talking about like a $1.2 million system that I heard at Paragon in Ann Arbor, Michigan a few weeks ago, and it was with the Sonus Faber Suprema, the 4 chassis, beautiful speaker system with crossover and all that, and with Dan DiAgostino, the top of the line power amps. Power amps powering each of the 4 chassis and all that sort of stuff. When I heard this for the first time, I heard it in a way I'd never heard it before. It literally was 3-dimensional, and it was exactly like the drums were back here. You had a couple instruments here, you had a couple instruments over there. I mean, it was just phenomenal. It was like the combo was in front of you performing. It was one of the most beautiful recordings that I've actually ever heard and that I've actually ever experienced. Now, I don't get that in the system that I listen to now, which is a vintage Macintosh and running through the Sonus Faber Lumina 2 Amateurs, which are right here. But I can't get it that way. But I don't think you have to spend $1.2 million to get it, but I think you have to spend more than a few thousand to get it. So, but this is a great source. Okay, so looking at those, the first source that I will usually listen to in any system, although I've kind of replaced it with the next thing here. Well, I haven't replaced it. Diana Krall's "Only Trust Your Heart." Now, this is one of her earlier CDs. I think it goes back to the early 90s, if not the late 80s. We'll, again, put that up, the actual date on there. The 2 songs that I use on this is the second cut, "Only Trust Your Heart," and the 5th cut, "The Folks Who Live on the Hill," for a couple of different reasons that I'll talk about. First of all, the soundstage isn't immense. We're here on the I'm here now on the on what is the left side. It's confusing because facing the camera I want to say right, but this is on the left side. There's a little bit of the hi-hat should be appearing over here, literally over here from the speaker, not out of the speaker, not too far behind, but just you'll hear that when you get that. But the main thing that I love this for is to hear the female vocal. Her vocals are great, and it should be coming right out of the center, maybe a little higher or lower, and depending on the speaker position and things like that. It should be coming out of the center, and it should be very in a good system. And even in this system, that's not the world's greatest by any means, it should be nice and targeted. There's a distinct place where you can tell where that vocal is coming from. So that's with "Only Trust Your Heart." That's what I listen to in that, and I usually like to start out that first, and then also the vocal being in the mid-range. If it's way too pronounced, which it isn't in here, even though it's close mic'd, it's not overly pronounced. By that I mean it's not forward and in your face like some female vocals or some vocals, but nice and laid back in there. If it is, then there might be like a mid-range bump that's happening with some of the items. That's where you got to switch stuff out and decide what it is if you're evaluating your own system or when you're listening to speakers or a power amp or whatever. How does it do it? I do find that the power amp makes a really big difference. There's a cool Paul McGowan video from several years back about how important a good preamp though is too, and I'll put a link to that in the description. But anyway, great for looking at that. Also, Christian McBride is doing the bass on both of these songs, and this was before Christian McBride was as big as Christian McBride is now. If you know jazz bass players, he's at the top right now. But it is so the bass is good. This is a good thing for evaluating bass. The articulation of the bass in this is great. This was recorded by Al Schmidt, who's a genius of recording engineers. Al Schmidt, look his name up, because when you have a recording that was done by him, you have an excellent gold there. Tommy LaPuma also was the producer of this, and he was amazing. He did a lot of early Al Jarreau stuff with Al Schmitt, and the two of them worked together on a lot of projects, including this. So that's really nice as well. But you know, so you get that nice bass, and this will also evaluate. You know, like I know that these speakers do bass, but it only goes down to around the high 40s, low 50 hertz. And so I've actually put in, if you've seen some of my other videos, the Rel T0 sub, and I'll be talking about those later on too. But anyway, so this is a great source for that. The second song that I always play on at Folks Who Live on the Hill, incredible for the revealing nature, something, the accuracy, the resolution. She's very close mic. The mic is very close on her. And you know, if you just like open your mouth, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that again because it's kind of disgusting, but if you listen to yourself and just be really quiet and just listen to your opening your mouth and stuff, you can actually feel it too, but hear that separation of the, you know, of the mouth and the movement almost of the saliva around the tongue. I know it sounds disgusting, but in that song, you hear that all of that movement on a good revealing system. And that's why I love to use that song. Matter of fact, I think I like that actually better than Only Trust Your Heart, because it gives a lot of the resolution of how good the resolution is. And it is absolutely incredible there. There's some stand noise, there's some keyboard key noise, really, you know, close mic'd stuff here. And breath. The breath intakes, you hear those. You can hear it on Only Trust Your Heart, but you really hear the breathing on this. Now, this is where I'm going to do another video, actually a separate video on all of this stuff. Does this matter? You know, if you just want to listen to the song, and if you're just doing this, first of all, you're probably not watching this video, but I'm going to have a video that answers this question, I hope, or at least explores this question. But there is something added to it, and what is added is that if the idea with an audiophile is to make the reproduction of the music real, when you hear those very human things, when you hear breathing, when you hear the key noise, I want to go back for a second to the John Clemmer album. A lot of key clicks from the saxophone on here. When you hear those things, it does give the reproduction, especially then if you have the sound stage and the focus of the instruments, it gives it a really, really nice human touch and makes it seem very, very real. Leading now to what has become my favorite system analysis CD right now. And again, you can stream this. By the way, the Diana Krall, very easy to stream. You can find it all over the place. This you can find as well. And I'll show you how old I am. This album was produced released in 1991, and to me, this is one of Al Di Meola's newer works, because the album that blew my mind, that made me want to be a guitar player, that made me an aficionado of the Les Paul, Gibson Les Paul, was, I have it over here, I'll try to put an insert of it, but Elegant Gypsy by Al Di Meola. But this is not Elegant Gypsy. There's no electronics in this, and the instrument, the bandoneon, it played by Dino Saluzzi. I'm reading this off the back here. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, please feel free to comment and let me know. It's like a concertina. It's like a squeeze box. Okay, two songs in here that I really listen to, but this just to go back for a second, world music, okay? No drum set in here, but a lot of congas, a lot of hand percussion, acoustic guitars, you know, so you know, just nothing electronic. This is the opposite of Elegant Gypsy, but recorded beautifully. The two songs that I listened to, number 7, cut number 7, No Mystery. No Mystery is a great song. It comes from an earlier Return to Forever album, which featured of course, Chick Corea, Stanley Clarke, Al Di Meola, and Lenny White. The three of them made 3 really great electric band albums, although that was before Chick Corea started the electric band. And it was Where Have I Known You Before, and then the mega hit Romantic Warrior. But before that, in between those two, it's kind of a sleeper of an album, No Mystery. So No Mystery is a composition, I believe, by Al Di Meola. I meant to check that before. I'll double check. If I'm wrong, I'll put it in the comments on here. But No Mystery in this is incredible. It is beautifully recorded. And it has multi-phases. It's actually 12 minutes and 37 seconds long. It's the longest cut on the album, but it's really, really good and really fulfilling. The first thing that I will tell you about this is that after the theme or intro theme is stated twice, everything goes silent, and then over here, literally where I'm sitting, you've got Al's guitar. It's actually maybe a little bit more to the left, and actually maybe a little bit more up. Think of this as my left speaker. Okay, so so in a good system, when you're listening to this, if Al's guitar, it won't be there because it's gonna position it somewhere, except on the cheapest sort of stuff that you'd be listening to. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna hear it up and over here, not in the speaker at all. In some really good systems, you actually hear it more high than you do to the left, and it goes for a couple of times. And you can also look at resolution. You can look at clarity in that of the guitar. You can hear the dynamics of the guitar and how is that being reproduced. It's very crisp, very precise. But that's the first thing that I listened to with this. And then the instruments, the bandoneon is I think over here somewhere, and then there's vocals, but they're just kind of like chorus sort of things. They're not words, and they're coming from way up here. So the soundstage, I actually didn't give you another important part of the soundstage: width, depth, height. Height is a part of it, and sometimes in great systems, they go way up there, way above that. And also they go way far to the right and way far to the left as well. So, that's something you can look at. So anyway, that is the No Mystery cut on this. The other one for resolution, basically, although again, you get all of the other things in there. Falling Grace, very short song, but it's an incredible song. And that one really features the bandoneon in a solo part. It has solos in the other part there, but everything kind of goes silent. You have some percussion behind it, but and in that, resolution. Nothing better for resolution, because not only do you hear like the key clicks, and you can hear this actually even in the intro where all the instruments are playing, but when it's featured on its own, it's so close mic'd, you not only hear the clicks, but, and this is the most impressive thing, and why, if I only had one CD to recommend for listening to a system, it would be this. It has you can hear, it's an instrument with bellows, it's like a concertina, right? The air coming into it. You hear that in there, and it sounds so natural. It sounds so cool. It's almost like you can not just hear the air, but the air intermixing with the leather of the bellows. I mean, amazing. And again, it's like, oh, do I really need that stuff to enjoy the song? No, of course you don't. But once you get into this stuff, it's great when you can hear it. You can actually hear it on some other songs in here too, but none as well as Falling Grace. So Falling Grace, a great one for resolution. It also has all the other things, dynamics. Things are focused. Things are in a nice sound stage. This is just, like I said, this is my desert island. If I don't know if it's the only thing that I ever listen to, because there are albums that I like better. But I love this album, and if I Desert Island, and I'm evaluating equipment, I don't know why on the desert island I have all this equipment to evaluate, or it would seem like I'd be worried about other things besides that. But this is the one for evaluation. Very briefly, another. One other thing about this: when you go back to No Mystery, toward the end, in the last couple of minutes of it, there's a kind of a faster part, and you can right about here, where I'm pointing in the stereo spectrum, right about here, you hear what I think is like a snare cajon that's in there, and boom, boom, boom. You hear the banging on that, of course, in time and sounding much better than I just did, and it's like it's on a surface that is palpable. You can, it's right there, and you can tell that it's dead flat, and like I said again, this was just recorded so beautifully. Talk about beautiful recordings. Telarc, anytime you get a CD by Telarc or Deutsche Grammophon for that matter, number of other things. Heads Up usually did really great stuff. This is Frank Morgan, a saxophone player. This is just a great grassroots jazz CD. Kind of old school, but recorded beautifully because it's recorded by Telarc. Milano was the first song, the first cut on it, and what I listened to for that is, again, you hear the key noises and things like that. The soundstage isn't giant, but the precision of the instrument is great. But this one has something very special, is that Frank Morgan was kind of close mic, but then he swung a little back and forth, or literally moved away back and forth, either across the stage or from the mic. And toward the end, after you get with the fourth part of the drum solo, it's in 4 sections, kind of like trading, and after the fourth one there, they restate the theme, I think, a couple of times, and then there's this little riff before they go to the final restatement of the theme, and it's like, and the cool thing is, it starts right here in the right. On my system, it's more in the speaker, but on really good systems that I've heard, back when I had a Conrad Johnson tube preamplifier particularly, I could hear it. It's more up here, and it goes across to, not quite, it doesn't go all the way from left to right, but there's this arc that comes in there and kind of ends up in the center. And that is really cool. On a really good system, using this as the source, you can hear that. And it's just beautiful. Actually, in the early part, as the first solo goes up, you can actually hear Frank moving a little bit, but not as clearly as when you get at the end. And again, we'll edit in where the time is on that one. This is one, I was at Paulson's with one of the salespeople there, a really nice man by the name of Bill, and he introduced me to this just recently in the last couple of months. And it is Ray Montford, and it's called Shed Your Skin. This one is very, very hard. I cannot find it on Tidal. I did find it in Apple Music, and so when I was playing this, I was actually using my Oris Blue Me Bluetooth that I brought to a place that, can you please plug this in and let me hear this? Because I could, then I got the CD, but when I went to audition it, the CD was coming the day after I was scheduled to go. Long story, you don't need to hear this. I don't know whether to edit out the minutia or to leave it in because it's so darn endearing. But anyway, One Witness is the song that is, talk about soundstage. It is wide, it is kind of deep. The first time I heard this, actually, the first time I heard it was on an Anthem power amp through I think a Blue Sound streamer. Not a really expensive one. And on Paradigm Premier 700 Fs, which I was looking at, and I couldn't believe. Now, granted, it was in a bigger room. The sound stage was long, high, especially toward the end of the cut. Deep, wide, little things happening, moving across the spectrum. Lots of dynamics. If you want to listen for the dynamics, so dynamic soundstage and resolution. little clicks, little hand percussion going off. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And not only that, this is just a beautiful CD. I love it from beginning to end. And I think it is the Shed Your Skin song is pretty good. And Alchemy is a really cool song. Passion is a really cool song. All of these, they have a lot of the things. The second cut, Ice House, incredible dynamics on the guitar playing, just and again with the percussion, incredible dynamics. One other one that you're gonna have to order the CD to find this. I cannot find this anywhere, not even on Apple Music for streaming. This is Joe Pass, who everybody, if you know jazz guitar, you all know Joe Pass, but also John Paisano, who not everyone knows, and he doesn't have a big discography out there. Although he's been on tons and tons of things, and he's an incredibly gifted player. This album, Duets, which was done in, let me see if I can find a date on this, 1996. Again, one of the newer CDs, of course, for me. But when they were playing, this was the stuff that I was listening to when I was 30 years ago back buying equipment. I mean, it's amazing how quickly time goes by. But this CD, all it is two guitars. That's it. It's true duets. It's not two guitars and instruments, and it's just those two guitars. And talk about resolution. You hear the chair noise of them moving back. I'm trying to do it now. If I had chair noise all day and now I can't get it when I want it. The noise of the stool that they're sitting on, the string noise. And also for location, it's not a big sound stage because it's just two guitars, but I believe over here it is John Paisano, and over on to the right, but in between the speakers, but to the right and a little high, over there is Joe Pass. Incredible. And the song that I use on this one is Si Vous Plaît, which is the third cut. As well as a longer cut that's really kind of intricate and complicated, and that's cut number 8, S-A-T-I-E, Sadie, I want to say, or it might be pronounced different. Again, comment if you can. But great CD, but you're going to need to go on eBay and buy this used. It's Pablo Records. They did great recordings, close mic'd. All of that sort of stuff. You can even hear breathing in this, if that's what you want to do. So those are my main sources. Now there's a few things that I found. I'll put the CD up. I actually have it, but I left it in the other room. I don't want to stop this. Sweeney Todd soundtrack, especially the song Joanna. There's 4 versions of it. This is the quartet version, so I think it's the final version of it. It is the one, if you know the play Sweeney Todd at all, if you know the musical, I mean Sweeney Todd, it's the one where Todd is in the barbershop. He's over there. The bell rings. People are coming in. And he and 3 other characters, including the daughter Joanna, including his, who he doesn't know, was, I won't say it because I don't want to do a spoiler, the beggar woman. And also Anthony, young Anthony, who's in love with Joanna, and they're all trading that, and Sweeney is over there, and Anthony is over here. Joanna is in the middle, beautifully placed, and the beggar woman is like literally over here. Okay, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes in this system, I hear her, like if I really concentrate on the speaker, I do kind of hear it here in the tweeter, but when you just let yourself go and do that, it is, but it's not as defined on my system. But I know it. I've heard it on really good systems because we listened to this. My daughter and I listened to this on Supremas, but this time, and this is why I know the Supremas are so beautiful, because I've heard it with 2 really expensive, high-quality systems. This was with the Supremas with the Macintosh system, with the 4 different amps running the 4 different chassis of the Supremas. And I mean, this was not just focused on the vocal. I knew where the vocal was, and really tight. This was almost like a 3-dimensional. You could tell that there were bodies on stage or on a sound stage doing this. I don't mean this sound stage. I mean in the real sound stage. It was like being in the theater. I don't have anything that can compare with that. in my system, but I do get a very good, nice soundstage with that particular song. For dynamics, when you want to look at that, the beginning has incredible highs and lows, and it's this is almost the sort of thing where you got to watch your speakers. Don't run it too hot. And then that's the other thing, is that when we're looking at things like opera, I do want to just mention this. La Boheme is one of my favorite operas, and the chorus and orchestra of the Romanian Opera of Bucharest is, I think, an incredible recording of it. Everyone lauds the 70s era, or late 60s, early 70s Decca version of it. There's the Pavarotti version. I don't know if that's the Pavarotti version or if the one from RCA, Red Seal, is that. But I love this one. And again, it's placement, it's dynamics. The soundstage is really wide. The soundstage is really high. Same thing with Sweeney Todd. The only problem with this is the only way that you can find this is either get lucky and order it from a vendor in eBay who just happened to have it. In eBay, it's a chorus and orchestra of the Romanian Opera of Bucharest. But in title, I actually came across this by accident searching for La Boheme in title. And so if you just search for La Boheme, you might see the one that comes up. Now on this version here, it says Romanian Opera, and it spells Romania the way I think a lot of us would spell it here in the United States, Romanian. But in title, it is spelled Rumanian. And I think it doesn't say chorus and orchestra. It says orchis and chorustra. Orchestra and chorus. I'm going to leave that in. Orchestra and chorus of the Romanian with a U, not O. And I found that when I tried to reduplicate that, when I put that in title, it showed up, and it came up with La Traviata and two versions of The Barber of Seville as well, which are also I've listened to and are very good recordings. But I thought that this was an incredible recording. But of course, the best sources are going to be the sources that you know. Listen to them. Know where things are happening. I was in a story that I have. I was in another Ann Arbor shop, and I was listening to Diana Krall, which I started out with, the person who put it up on their streamer, and I was listening to it, and after a few seconds, I said, "You got the speakers backwards in there." And sure enough, he looked at it and said, "Yeah, you're right." And he switched them. How did I know that? Because I know the source that well. I know that the hi-hat, remember I told you, is over here to the left, and it was coming out of the right. So, and it shouldn't really make any difference, but it does. It does make a difference in the way that is. Like I said, though, find your sources, know them well, and then go in to listen to them. But if you don't have some, go ahead and take the tips that I have from some of these sources that I've had, most of which are available for streaming. I would love to hear what you're using as sources for your system, but more importantly, anyone who watches this can then look in the comments and they can see those as well. So you're really doing a service to people who are looking up this topic here. Like I said, this is the thing that I've wanted to do the most, is to talk about these sources and how I use them, and how important sources are in determining this. Again, remember, it's in the source where this stuff comes from. In the source where this stuff comes from at first, and then you can evaluate all that other equipment, which has that symbiotic relationship with all the other stuff. So it isn't just the sound stage is made by the speakers or it's made by the power amp. It's made by the source and delivered either really well, moderately well, acceptably well, and you got to find really crappy stuff nowadays to get it not good at all. I mean, that's and I think for the most part you'll find most of this is moderately well delivered, but when you hear it on a great system, it really matters. But that's not the point of this. This is the point of, okay, I know that this is what the soundstage is supposed to be. How is it being delivered on these speakers that I'm thinking of buying? How is it being delivered on this power amp that I'm thinking of buying? And that's the best way to think, not the best way, who knows what the best way is, but that's a great way to think of source material. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. I am seeing such wonderful comments on the other videos, and it's so encouraging. Right now, you know, this is, as I said, it's a labor of love. I don't have any sponsorship. I don't know if there ever will be any sponsorship, but pivoting the channel to this two-channel audio seems to be a good idea. It seems to be something that people want. And I'll tell you what, I'm not an expert on all the equipment. I am not an electronics expert, but I've listened for a long, long time. I've listened since I was a 5-year-old kid. And as a musician myself, I play guitar and drums and bass and some other kind of interesting instruments. This started out initially as my vehicle for ukulele music that I was doing. That's what Archive Stereo was. Archive was the imprint under which I was doing release of music. But you know, so when you do that, you get to know, and you'll find if you're new to this, if you don't get all this stuff, as you listen, as you start to listen more and more, you'll do this. I mean, when I was a guitar player and Al D. Miller was playing this Les Paul, I didn't even know what a Les Paul was. I didn't know that a Les Paul was a different sound from a Fender. You know, I had a friend who was listening to a Donald Fagen album, the Comic Curiad, and when it first came out, it kind of showed his person. I don't, you know, not going to mention them by name, kind of showed their ignorance of instrumentation, because he was making fun of, did you hear how that song starts out, that and I was thinking, what? So I went back, because I'd listened to this, what the hell are you talking about? Is there a synth in there or something? When I listened to it, it's a Fender Stratocaster set on either the one of the two of the 5 positions, one of the 2 humbucking modes. What a guy I used to work selling guitars and instruments and drums and stuff like that locally, and what he used to call the oingy oingy position. It's got kind of that little bounce to it, and that's what it was. And it's like, you know, I couldn't convince it. That's a guitar. That's not a guitar. That's a guitar. That's not a. Listen to it for yourself. It's the first cut on. I think it's Kamakiri, and I think it's the title cut. But Kamakiri, I was born yesterday when they got my Kamakiri, the day they handed me the keys. Okay, you don't need me singing here, but, you know, so that, but what I'm saying is, over time and over experience, 10 years before that, I probably wouldn't have known. I definitely wouldn't have known what position that was. By the way, if I got that wrong, feel free to comment on it. But, you know, it's just, it's over time you begin to do that. The more you know your sources, the better you'll be able to use them to evaluate your system. I've talked long enough today. Thank you very much for watching. Again, like, comment, and subscribe.